The sun was just beginning to rise over the glistening tarmac of Dubai International Airport when Lena Farouk stood quietly at the edge of the runway, clutching her mother's small lunchbox. Her mother, Aisha, worked as a cabin maid for one of the wealthiest businessmen in the Middle East, Mr. Adam Royce, a billionaire tech magnate who owned an entire fleet of private jets. Lena had come to deliver her mother's forgotten lunch, but her eyes, as always, were fixed on the aircraft itself. It wasn't just a plane to her. It was art. Lena had always loved machines, not just for what they did, but how they did it. Her late father had been an aviation engineer before a factory accident claimed his life when she was 12. Since then, Lena had devoured his old manuals and watched aircraft repair videos on her cracked tablet, memorizing every system: hydraulics, avionics, control panels, as if she were training to fly one herself. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the hangar, but as she approached, she caught sight of her mother inside the jet, a sleek silver Gulfstream G800, preparing the cabin for Mr. Royce's morning flight to Geneva. "Lena, what are you doing here?" Aisha whispered, peeking from the cabin door. "You'll get me fired if anyone sees you." "I just brought your lunch, Mama. And maybe I can help clean. Just for a minute?" Before Aisha could answer, a deep voice echoed behind them. "Who is this?" Mr. Royce stepped down from his black SUV, his tailored suit catching the sunlight like glass. His assistant, a woman in sharp heels, followed behind him, scrolling through a holographic tablet. Aisha bowed her head immediately. "Sir, this is my daughter, Lena. She was just—" "I didn't ask for her life story," Royce interrupted coldly, his gaze sliding over Lena with mild disgust. "One smudge from those hands could cost me thousands." Lena's cheeks burned, but she said nothing. Her mother whispered an apology and urged her back down the steps. "Don't touch anything," Royce added sharply, "especially that button." He pointed to the open cockpit, where the soft glow of 100 indicators lit the panel like a galaxy. Lena glanced up, just once, her curiosity aching. The button he meant was no ordinary switch. It was the aircraft's auxiliary power unit ignition, the system her father had once designed as a subcontractor for Royce's own company. She knew exactly what it did, but she also knew when to stay quiet. As she turned to leave, she heard Royce's mocking tone behind her. "See, Aisha, that's why some people clean jets and others own them." The words cut deeper than she expected. Hours later, as the jet climbed above the clouds, Lena sat on a public bench near the airport fence, watching the silver bird vanish into blue. She whispered a small prayer under her breath, not for the man who insulted her, but for her mother, who was still on that plane. She didn't know that within the next hour, the sky itself would test them both. At 34,000 feet, everything was calm. Royce reclined in his seat, sipping imported coffee, scrolling through stock reports. His two bodyguards murmured quietly. The cockpit lights flickered faintly. Nothing unusual. The pilot adjusted a few switches. Then, a pop, followed by a faint burning smell. "Sir, we're experiencing a minor electrical surge. Nothing to worry about." But then the cabin lights blinked again, and this time the monitors shut down completely. Captain, the flight controls just—" "Beep, beep, beep." Alarms screamed. The autopilot disengaged. Hydraulic pressure dropped. The pilot's hands flew across the panel. "We've lost primary systems." Royce stood. "What's happening?" "Please stay seated, sir." Suddenly, the co-pilot coughed. Smoke. The short circuit near the rear console had ignited a small fire. The oxygen masks deployed. Aisha screamed as the cabin jolted violently, coffee splashing over Royce's suit. "Mayday! Mayday!" The pilot's voice crackled through static. "Gulfstream 9XR to tower. Total electrical failure. Losing control." Then, silence. Within minutes, the plane dropped nearly 1,000 feet. Luggage crashed from overhead. Royce's assistant was crying. The pilots were trying to reboot, but every system was locked. Autopilot, navigation, even the backup circuits. And then, the pilot slumped forward. The co-pilot tried to pull him back. He was out cold. Smoke filled the cockpit. Royce's voice broke. What do we do?" Aisha held on to the seat, trembling, eyes wide in terror. But then, through the chaos, a voice rose from the back of the cabin. Shaky, small, but clear. "Mom?" Everyone turned. It was Lena. Standing in the aisle, her hair tousled from wind and smoke, clutching her father's old notebook.
The cabin was chaos. Papers flew like birds in a storm. The jet trembled, warning alarms shrieking from every corner. Royce's assistant screamed into a dead satellite phone while Aisha clung to her seat, frozen in terror. "Lena!" she gasped, disbelief flooding her face. "What are you? How? I couldn't let you go without me," Lena shouted over the noise, clutching her father's worn engineering notebook against her chest. "I hid in the service compartment before takeoff." Royce spun around, his face red with fury. "You did what?" Before he could continue, the plane lurched again, violently this time. Royce stumbled, hitting the wall. The lights flickered. A burning smell filled the air. The pilot's voice was faint and desperate. "We're losing all control surfaces. Manual overrides not responding." Smoke drifted through the cockpit door. The co-pilot coughed, eyes streaming, trying to keep the plane level. "We've got 10 minutes before we lose altitude completely." Royce's assistant screamed, "We're gonna die!" Royce turned to Aisha. "Get your daughter out of my way." But Aisha had already moved forward, her eyes scanning the cockpit like she'd done this 1,000 times in her mind. She saw the dark console, dead screens, flickering emergency lights, and one familiar thing. The button. The very same button Royce had told her not to touch. She ran her finger over the side panel. Her father's handwriting, tiny etched numbers on the edge of the design in his notebook, matched the layout exactly. Her voice trembled, but her mind was sharp. "Captain, the backup power relay, did you isolate it before the short?" The co-pilot blinked, confused. "What? How do you—" "You didn't," she said, already reaching for a switch above the overhead panel. "Your APU's locked in loop mode. You're feeding power back into the dead circuit." Royce stepped forward, incredulous. "Who are you to talk like that? You're a child." Lena ignored him. "I'm an engineer's daughter." She pulled open her father's notebook, the edges stained with years of grease and coffee, and flipped to a page marked Emergency Circuit Reset, G8 Systems. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "My dad worked for your company. He helped design this system before he died." The co-pilot's eyes widened. "You mean Farouk? You're his daughter?" Lena nodded. The pilot, barely conscious, managed to whisper, "Your father saved this plane once during testing." The realization hit Royce like lightning. The same man he'd once fired during a budget cut. His design now stood between life and death. The alarms wailed louder. "Altitude warning, 10,000 feet and dropping fast." "Listen to me," Lena shouted. "We can reroute through the backup channel, but we have to reset manually." "That's impossible mid-air," the co-pilot said. "Not if we cut ground power simulation and jumpstart through the external relay. It's risky, but it's the only way." Aisha was crying, terrified. "Lena, please, don't!" But Lena met her mother's eyes. Dad would have done it. She took a deep breath, then pressed her hand on the button. "Royce!" she screamed. "Don't touch that!" Click. For one horrible moment, everything went black. The engines whined, then sputtered. The nose of the jet dipped. Everyone was thrown forward. Then, a low, steady hum. Lights flickered. The panels came alive again, glowing faint blue. "Power restored," the co-pilot shouted, stunned. "Flight control systems online." Lena's hands moved fast, flipping switches as the plane stabilized. Reboot avionics. Restore hydraulic assist. There. The jet leveled out. Altitude stopped dropping. Silence. For the first time in 10 minutes, everyone could breathe again. Aisha collapsed into her seat, sobbing with relief. The co-pilot stared at Lena like she'd just performed a miracle. Royce, still gripping the armrest, looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. His voice was barely a whisper. You knew what that button did." Lena exhaled slowly. "You told me not to touch it, but my dad taught me why you should." The plane cruised steady again, sunlight breaking through the smoke, pouring golden light into the cabin. Royce sank back, speechless. Minutes later, emergency landing protocols engaged. The pilots took back control, guiding the jet toward a nearby airstrip. Lena sat beside her mother, still shaking. Her palms were black with soot, her notebook smelled like burning plastic, but she smiled faintly when she saw the horizon clearing. Her mother held her hand tightly. "My brave girl," she whispered. From the cockpit, the co-pilot called out, "Whoever trained that kid deserves a medal." Royce didn't respond. His pride had cracked, but so had something else, his ignorance. As the plane descended, he kept staring at Lena's small, dirt-streaked face. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who thought he knew everything realized that knowledge and genius could come from anywhere, even the daughter of a maid.
The jet glided through the clouds, the storm behind them now just a trembling shadow in the distance. Inside, the once chaotic cabin had gone silent. The hum of the engines, steady, calm, was now the most beautiful sound in the world. Lena sat quietly beside her mother. Her small hands were still trembling, her knuckles smudged with black dust. Aisha brushed the soot from her daughter's cheek, tears still drying on her face. Royce, the billionaire, hadn't said a word since the crisis. He sat across from them, motionless, his once pristine suit now wrinkled, his silver cufflinks smeared with grease from trying to steady himself. It wasn't the turbulence that shook him. It was the realization that a maid's daughter had just saved his life. "Flight 07RJ, this is Falcon Air Control. You're clear for emergency landing, runway 25, crackled the voice over the comms. "Copy that," the pilot responded, voice thick with exhaustion. "Systems stabilized thanks to unexpected help." The co-pilot looked back at Lena and smiled faintly. "Let's bring her home." As the jet descended, the passengers pressed their faces to the windows. The morning sun poured through the clouds, painting everything gold, like the sky itself was applauding the girl who refused to give up. The wheels touched down, the brakes screeched, and the impossible became reality. They landed safely. Applause erupted inside the cabin. The billionaire's assistants hugged each other. Aisha broke into tears again, holding her daughter close. The pilot turned in his seat, still shaking his head in disbelief. "I've flown 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that." As the cabin doors opened and rescue crews rushed in, Royce approached them slowly. He looked at Lena, this small girl in a faded uniform, clutching her father's old notebook like a medal of honor. "Your father," he began, voice unsteady. "Farouk, he worked for me years ago. He was one of the best." Lena's eyes softened, but she said nothing. "I let him go when we downsized the team," Royce continued, guilt flickering in his gaze. "I thought saving money mattered more than saving people." He exhaled deeply, the words heavy. "But today, your father's design, and you, saved this plane, saved all of us." He looked down, ashamed. "I owe your family everything."
Aisha's eyes filled again, her voice trembling. All we ever wanted was a chance. My husband died believing no one remembered his work. Royce swallowed hard. I remember now. Then he turned to Lena. I'm sorry for yelling at you, for looking down on you, for thinking your uniform meant you were less. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a golden business card, engraved with the logo of Royce Aerotech, the billion-dollar company that built the jet. From now on, he said softly, handing it to her, you'll never be invisible again. The next morning, the story broke worldwide. Maid's daughter saves billionaire's private jet. 12-year-old girl performs mid-air emergency fix. Engineer's legacy lives through his daughter. News outlets swarmed the airport. Reporters wanted to know her name, her father's name, the secret behind the miracle. But Lena stayed quiet through it all. She just smiled shyly as her mother held her close. Later that day, Royce visited them again, not with reporters or guards, but alone. He found them sitting in the airport cafe, sipping tea. Lena, he said gently, I have a proposal. She looked up, cautious. I want you to study at our company's engineering academy. Full scholarship, private mentorship. I'll personally sponsor your education, in your father's name. Aisha's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Royce, we can't. He interrupted softly. You can, and you will, because your daughter doesn't just have talent, she has courage, the kind this world needs. He turned to Lena again. Your father built the future. You saved it. Let me help you continue it. Lena's eyes welled up. She looked down at the golden card again, the sunlight glinting across its surface. Then, quietly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered, but only if you promise one thing. Royce blinked. What's that? She smiled faintly. Don't tell people you saved the jet. Tell them who taught me. Months later, a new aircraft prototype was unveiled at Royce Aerotech headquarters. Its name gleamed across the nose in elegant silver letters. The Farouk Lena System. Crowds cheered as Lena, now wearing a small engineering trainee badge, pressed the launch button, the same kind she once used to save a falling jet. Cameras flashed. Aisha stood in the front row, pride glowing in her eyes. Royce, standing beside them, leaned down and said, Remember, Lena, you didn't just save a plane that day. You reminded us who the real geniuses are. Lena smiled at the sky, watching a jet rise above the clouds. She said, Dad would have liked that. He always said the sky belongs to the brave.